it's Dan, continuing our series to 1500 ELO, and today I will be covering a game on why you shouldn't violate the principles of chess. What does that mean? How to punish an aggressive attacker. So in this game, switching out my repertoire, I've been playing a lot of Vienna. Decided in my previous video, I announced I'm going back to D4. Just the London system is best for a schedule like mine, or like most adults, where you want to play chess, you want to study, you frankly don't have the time to go into crazy theory. The London system's amazing. London system, D4, followed by B6, we're facing the English defense, which is, I never faced it before. The whole idea with B6 is he's going to fianchetto his white light squared bishop. So I decided, we're going to continue on the London system. Why is it called the London system? An opening that has the word system in it, from my understanding, is you just play it every time. Right? Obviously, you know, there could be variations depending on which your opponent moves, but unlike certain openings, for example, the Carl Khan, which only goes against E4, you can play the London system against almost any opening, except the England Gambit. So my opponent of fianchettos his light squared bishop, I go E3, A6. So I was like, okay, this is weird. I never seen an attack like this. So I was like, okay, I played hundreds of games in London, probably over 1,000 in total. But I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna activate my bishop, or my knight F3. He goes D6. I develop on the bishop. So whenever you are facing an opening that you don't know, and you clearly see, like, I don't think this is theory move. I know it's not theory move because the analysis told me so. I follow the principles of chess. I activated 3 out of my 4 minority pieces. The next one to come. I could have finished off the pyramid. I decided, I don't know, what is my opponent doing? He's pushing a lot of pawns, he's creating some spikes. I was like, let me do what my opponent's not doing, and let me activate all my minority pieces. Great. And my opponent activates his knight to F6. In this position, I was like, okay, if we go, I felt like I had a better position. The good thing about the London system is you don't always have to castle, it really is depending. And I didn't want to castle yet because I was like, I don't know what my opponent's doing. And if we go to the evaluation board, I have a 0.6 advantage, so not bad, but that's kind of how it is with London systems. Unless your opponent knows theory how to refute it, or the best way to go against, which would really be C4, D4, or D4, C4. Now you usually end up in a better position. So my whole thing is, okay, it's gonna be a very positional game because clearly my opponent is decent with pawn play. But that's how it felt to me. I go A3. The whole idea with A3 is a slightly improving move, right? It prevents any knight business actions and eventual pawn storm, queenside pawn storm, maybe. I was like, okay, let's do an improving move. I don't know what my opponent's doing. He goes knight to C6. I was like, perfect. Way to block your bishop. But at this point, I was like, okay, if we open up the analysis, every move, it seems to improve my position. I go here, push my d-pawn. The reason why I push my d-pawn is I noticed, all right, my opponent is only 2 safe squares for his knight is to go back. He has to undevelop his knight, or he has to sack his knight, in which I would take a knight. So that's kind of, luckily I saw that, I'm proud of myself. I was like, I feel like this knight's constricted, and it worked. D6, he pushes his, essentially undevelops his knight, and now I'm like, okay, we have 2 pieces attacking my pawn versus 1 defender. I was like, should I bring out my bishop? I was like, I really don't want to do my bishop. Instead, I opted to defend it with a pawn, reinforcing my pawn structure. My opponent here now attacks my bishop. I'll push it back. I was like, let's keep it simple, stupid. Now I have 2 powerful bishops. Has some vision, would have more vision, but this is a very close position. What does it mean by close game? There's no pawn. There's a majority of the pawns are still on the board, and as of move 10, we have exchanged 0 pawns. So we both have 3 pawns, or 9 pawns. 3? Yeah, 9 pawns. So here, my opponent decides to attempt a pawn break with C6. I hear think about it a minute. I was like, what should I do? I can't really. My initial thought is like, I would love if I would have pushed my C pawn before my knight, because that would have allowed me to reinforce it. However, I decided to take. Why I decided to take? Because if I allowed to take, I have 2 attackers versus 2 attackers. I mean, I don't think it would have been bad, actually. Never mind. I just didn't want it. So I just took. My opponent now activates his knight. And now I pop my knight in the center. I'm offering a knight exchange. And if we go here, if we open up the analysis board, still pretty even. I'm offering a knight exchange. But I had this tactic in mind. I was like, if my opponent does not accept this knight change, I am winning a pawn and gaining tempo. Now am I gaining a tempo? Well, I was eyeing this b6 pawn for a minute. However, I noticed it was defended by the queen. So I was like, all right, a knight exchange, all it does is help open the position. It's dead even, I need to open it up. I wanted to open up the position. And if my opponent didn't want to, well, he's gonna find out. My opponent refuses the knight exchange because he figured, oh, it's defended, it's fine. Now you just lost a pawn. And in a position in a game that is going to be slow, and I already knew this game was going to be a longer game. My opponent is pushing very slowly, so was I. You're up a pawn. This is really good for me. And at this point, oh my gosh. Even though I'm up a pawn, I didn't realize how crazy my position was. I loved my position, but I didn't realize it. Why was this a tactic? Why am I up almost 5 points of material? Continuity. If my opponent moves his queen, now that knight is undefended. And I would have loved if he would have done something dumb like this, because then that would have been a fork. So that is why I may have just won a pawn, but I won a tempo. And this is, I would say, this is pretty good piece coordination of how to coordinate both, you know, your minority pieces to create an attack. So just in a few moves, if we go back, we notice before I push that pawn, very close game. And then in a couple of moves, we begin our attack. And as you see, pretty dead even. So, my opponent moves his queen to b8. I decide, hey, now that knight's undefended, I could take a knight. What's more forceful than taking a knight? Taking a knight with a check. So my opponent moves, and I go. And if you notice the time, I do waste some time. I don't waste time. I'm just thinking, how can I not throw this position? I thought about, oh, that would have been good here. I could have taken that rook. Actually, yeah, that rook would have been mine. Yeah, that would have been cool. I kind of repeated a few times. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, okay, wait, let me not draw the game, because I had a previous game where I refuted the England Gambit, almost won, drew it because I was just, it's 3 in the morning, dog. What do you want from me? I decided now I'm going to push my pawn. What's the idea with this pawn push? Open up the position, activate my queen, and do some nasty things, yo. My opponent now tries to do another, I won't even call this a pawn break. I don't know what this was. So I just take. Why did I want to take? Because if he takes, I just saw this weakened diagonal of my opponent, where my bishop is a very powerful bishop. You want to see the difference between a strong and a weak bishop? Very weak bishop has no control. If I open up this diagonal, it strengthens mine. So when you are losing, it is good to attack with your pieces. However, this was a poor attempt of attack because it just strengthened my position so much. So then my opponent takes, you know, activating it, I don't care, I took, and he takes. Now, what would have been really cool, yeah, so at this point, if we go, 5.6 points of material, even though I'm only up to 0.3. Why is that? Because I checked. My opponent wisely blocks. Pretty cool. I check with a knight. You think, why would you lose a knight? You can't, because it's pinned. I identified a pin, very proud of myself for that. I'm patting myself on the back. He moves, I now take the knight. The whole idea with taking with the knight is I saw, before I made this move, notice I spent almost 30 seconds on this move. Tactics, puzzles are working, I guess. I see a queen and a king in the same square, and I see a knight that could fork. He takes with the queen, even better for me, because now I just want a queen. And at this point, I'm at 13 points of material. So my whole mindset is, what can I do? It's like, let's simplify. I'm up so much material, let's not be greedy. The best way in chess, or the way I like to play, I am not the best at coordinating all my, sometimes you have such a strong advantage, I feel like as if I could potentially ruin it. and my opponent could still create some tactics, because now that we have an open position and my opponent has both his bishops and the rook, and I still haven't castled. So I was like, I need to be very careful not blundering any checkmates or just draws or repetition. He takes, I check. He takes my pawn, I take the rook, and now my opponent checks me. I go here. I don't know if this was the best move. Is this a good move? Yeah, I felt, now we're in the end game, and I was worried about getting caught in the back rank and potentially getting checkmated. I knew I had such a crushing position. I didn't want to calculate the risk of me going out here. I probably would have been fine, maybe, but I figured, hey, let's activate the king. We're already in the end game. Plan on trading off all my pieces because I have so many pawns. My opponent pushes his pawn. I offer a rook exchange. He checks. I take the queen. Why did I take the queen? Because I would win the rook. So notice, I'm losing material, but my advantage is the same. So I'm very proud of myself that I was like, hey, why do I need a queen if I can make another? My opponent pushes. I block the push. My opponent activates his queen. I'm just checking, and I take the bishop. Why do I take the bishop? My opponent is fully disarmed. He has one bishop, but pretty easy to avoid a single bishop against an end game, just because you could kind of just stay on the squares that that bishop isn't protecting. But why not just take it? And after some more moves, we're made in 5. We check. He takes. I extend it. I did not know there was made in 5. I knew there was probably a way I could easily mate him with a knight and a rook. However, I figured, let's take rid of all the pawns. I think he was going to resign. I was like, come on, man, just resign. Because if he wasn't going to resign, I would take his pawns and I was going to promote to a queen, which is what I did. So after a few moves, I allow him to take the knight because I don't care. And I use this rook to cut off the king. And he can't take the pawn. Make a queen. And from here is a simple ladder mate. 54 move game. If we go to the analysis, I had 87% accuracy for a 54 move game, or I don't know if it was 54. I just said it. Pretty proud of myself. The London system is working. I'm still playing chess regularly, just not making as many videos. So for those who decided to watch up to the end, thank you.